nuclear armed states, and all of them are investing billions into their arsenals. So one of the things that we wanted to do with our treaty making was to address this question and thinking about what we can do about nuclear weapons in a context in which there are 15,000 nuclear weapons, rising tensions. I mean, look at what's happening in the media these days with North Korea, with Russia, with the United States. We have a lot of concerns, and civil society and states a few years ago were thinking about what they should do. Allison, did the slides disappear?
No, they didn't disappear. We have a poll going concurrently. I think it's only for attendees to see that, though. So
Okay,
if you can get back to the slide.
Okay, sorry, I was just thrown off a bit by that. So civil society and NGOs a few years ago were thinking, what can we do about this in a situation where we can't remove nuclear weapons from the states that have them? And so we thought that what if we prohibit them the same way that cluster munitions and landmines have been prohibited, the same way that all other weapons of mass destruction, like chemical and biological weapons, have been prohibited, changing their status under international law to ensure that they are treated equally to these other weapons, which are indiscriminate, unacceptable, immoral, and illegal. And so this is the approach that we took, and we started by doing what happened with the landmines and cluster munitions processes, which was to really examine the humanitarian impact of these weapons and to take back the discourse away from thinking about nuclear weapons as tools for security and for geopolitics, and looking at them for what they really do, which is destroying the planet, killing human beings, committing genocide. That's what these weapons are. And so through a process with a few committed states, at that time Norway, Mexico, and Austria, we hosted 3 conferences looking at the humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons. And at the same time, inside the UN, we were building up support for this through joint statements, through resolutions, through other activities and discussions, bringing more and more states on board, until in 2015, we had about almost 160 states that were expressing concern with the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons and wanting to take action. Where that went from there at the UN was closer and closer towards a treaty banning nuclear weapons. States were trying to figure out how they could translate this humanitarian initiative into political and legal action. And the idea that they centered on was this idea of prohibiting nuclear weapons through a legally binding treaty. And by October of 2016, last year at the General Assembly, 123 states decided that they wanted to start these negotiations in 2017. That was against the opposition from the nuclear armed states. The United States was actively lobbying against this process beginning. They were trying to compel their allies to not join in negotiations. The United States instructed NATO allies not to attend, and for the most part, they have listened to this, with the exception of the Netherlands. So despite this opposition, though, the exciting thing is that 123 states were willing to stand up in the General Assembly and be counted for being in support of these negotiations. And WILPF has played a central role over the last, throughout our history, really, but certainly in the entire nuclear era, protesting nuclear weapons, campaigning for their elimination, campaigning against nuclear testing. We've been involved in all of the major activities against nuclear weapons throughout history, and we've been playing a leading role also in the Nuclear Ban Treaty. We're an active member in ICAN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which is the lead civil society campaign on this issue. Next slide, Allison.
Sorry, Ray. I think after doing the poll, the slides are not coming back. Are you able to keep going?
Yeah, I can keep going. So where we are now with the ban treaty is that we've had the first round of negotiations. We're well set after this first round. It sort of exceeded expectations, I think. That happened the last week of March. We heard for the first time from most countries what their real vision is for this treaty, which was that this would be an instrument to prohibit stockpiling of nuclear weapons, use and threat of use, deployment, development, research, transit, transfer, etc., all the nuclear weapon related activities, and also things like financing to help us with divestment campaigns against nuclear weapons. Things like providing for victim assistance and environmental remediation were also discussed. So it's a really exciting treaty that could be developed, and we heard mostly convergence around the core prohibitions and principles and objectives of the treaty in March. What happens now is that the president will take all these views and perspectives, write a draft treaty, which she will then present to states probably in the second half of May. And then negotiations are going to resume again in New York on the 15th of June. There's about 130 governments that actively participated in the negotiations in March. We hope that all of them will also participate in June and July. It's possible that more states will join in as well. We have active campaigning going on in the states that have decided to boycott these negotiations. One of the interesting things about the boycott that actually helped us in a way was that on the opening of the March negotiations, the new US ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, staged a press conference outside the General Assembly Hall, saying that it was not in the interests of humanity for us to be prohibiting nuclear weapons. And this brought a lot of media attention to the negotiations that we might not have otherwise had. So that was quite an interesting dynamic to have the United States and France and the UK standing outside the conference room while civil society and 130 other states were inside negotiating this new treaty. So we hope that is going to continue, that dynamic, that motivation and momentum that we have going for this treaty. We hope that'll continue in June and July. And that's part of why we are organizing this event that Beatrice is going to tell you all about.
Great, thanks so much, Ray. If you do have questions about the ban or the negotiations, please keep them in mind. You could raise your hand in the chat, and we'll note that you have a question on this later when we get to the question and answer period. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Beatrice Maneshi. Beatrice is working with us exclusively for the coordination of this event, and she's going to talk you through it in detail.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for this webinar. I want to talk to you a little bit more about why we're doing this march. The reasons that we're doing this march were outlined directly by Ray of the momentous period in history we are of being able to ban nuclear weapons. Some people may ask how are we still doing this process? That people have been having marches and rallies around the world for over 50 years trying to ban nuclear weapons. But this is really the momentous period in history where we can actually show our solidarity and support for the negotiations that are taking place currently inside of the UN. So right here I have some of the underlying beliefs and values that we have, the underpinned philosophy of why we're getting together to call for the end of nuclear weapons production, use, transfer, both at a legal aspect and both at a philosophical aspect. I won't go through it because I believe that everyone can read through this webinar, which will be recorded later, as well as find these points outlined on our website. So we're going to be having our march in New York City on Saturday the 17th from 12 to 4. There'll be lots of speakers, lots of rallying, shouting in the streets, banners, and what our main underlying goal is, although this is a very, very serious issue, we want to have positivity and support, led by women especially, as the leading point of calling for the ban on nuclear weapons. During the presentations, we'll have various speakers presented from Habakasha, dynamic and progressive political, arts, and cultural representatives, as well as possible musical performances. We're currently in the process of choosing our final speakers, but they will be listed on our website later on. One second, gotta get back to the slide. Where's it at? So, there's a bunch of ways to get involved. I'm gonna run through them. So first, there's formally supporting the event. As you know, any kind of activism costs a lot of money to put together, and we need a lot of support from people such as you. So we're asking for individuals and organizations to sponsor, endorse, and partner our event. Now, there's a way to find out what these various levels of support mean, and I'm going to go through that with you right now. So, on our website, Women Ban the Bomb, you could go down to Support Us, and you'll be able to see the various ways to get involved. So we're constantly taking volunteers, so if you're in New York, please do get in touch. But we would really appreciate if you could be a financial supporter for us. So we have 3 different tiers of sponsors: the Peace Stub of contributions of $1,000 or more, the Olive Branch contributions of $500 to $1,000 basically, and Hand to Heart, which is $250 to $499. These different various levels of sponsorship will result in your logo or name being presented on our website on official material and honorable mention at the actual event. We also want to include partners and organizations who can't contribute as much. So we are taking on partnerships between $25 and $250. And we ask for a generous support in giving us media love, shouting out to us on various channels, blasting through email. There's various ways to get involved. And finally, if you don't have the financial contribution as an organization or an individual, send us an email. We would love to hear from you. We'll list your name as an endorser. Donations are suggested to be $25, but if you cannot make that, we still welcome your support, and it's highly appreciated. So, the next way to get involved is to come to our event in New York. So our march is going to be full of ralliers, energy, good times, and a final call to ban nuclear weapons. So come get together with a bunch of like-minded people in New York City. It'll be a great day. So there's 2 ways to tell us you're going to come and join us in New York City. You could sign up on our Facebook page, or you can sign up on our website. So we're also looking for volunteers for the day of. There's various different moving aspects as we anticipate a large turnout. If you want to find where our Facebook page is, simply go to Facebook and look up Women's March to Ban the Bomb. You can see we have many attendees, and it'll give you a continuous update of where we're going and what's coming next. So the next way to get involved is to spread the word. Email us and promote us on your social networks. Formally support the organization. Like and share our social media products. Throughout the next coming weeks, we'll be having a very strong media campaign, sending out infographics, information, tweeting, and really getting the connection between why women lead the march to end and ban nuclear weapons. So these are the hashtags we're trying to trend: nuclear ban and women ban the bomb. And you could follow Reaching Political Will and WILPF on Twitter, and also Women Ban the Bomb on Twitter and Instagram. So we also have a GoFundMe set up. We also have a GoFundMe set up to raise money through different networks. So after this webinar, if you have time, sit down, just draft an email, we'll send a response, and promote, promote, promote. We need to get those dollars in so that we can be able to put this event on. We couldn't do it without your support. I'm just going to show you really fast what it looks like. So we have the GoFundMe page up on the website, and you can see that there's a donation button here. There's an easy way to share. There's an easy way to share this through all the different means, and you could send a little message of support wherever you want to. This is very easy to share on your social media channels such as Facebook and Twitter. So we realize that everyone is coming from different places in the world to try and connect to us in giving support and solidarity. So if you're not going to be in New York, that's okay. We already thought about the possibility, and we want to give you the tools and opportunities to still be involved. So we're hoping that as WILPF and as other organizers that are dedicated to banning nuclear weapons, that you will get involved and host a solidarity event, or jump into a solidarity event being hosted near you. So we currently have a system that will intake where solidarity events are being held, and don't worry if you've never had a march or rally, you'll see inside of our handouts that are available inside of the GoToWebinar, we have a comprehensive guide on how to get involved, how to organize your own event, and all the different tools you need to be able to put together a successful event on the 17th. So that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be a march, it doesn't mean it has to be a rally. Getting together people and spreading the message that these negotiations are coming on and why it's important and why we really need to ban nuclear weapons is our major guide. Our overall target objective as well is to start trending the tags on social media that we have internationally. And there's a way that you can tell us that this is happening and we can watch all of the different events happening around the world. And that's if you go to our website and you go to solidarity events around the world. So when you log down to solidarity events around the world, you can see there's a world map here. After this webinar, I hope that more people will be signing up to host their own events around the world. We have some other organizations that are currently in the process of developing it, and their solidarity events will be listed and how to get a hold of them there. So you could see we already have an event happening here in New York. There's one in Chicago currently, and there's an event being put on also in Australia. So if you do find there's already a solidarity event happening near you, you can click on the asterisks inside of the map, and you'll see who the organizers are, where the location is, the date and time, and how to get in touch with them. So we encourage everyone to try and get out on the streets. This is how we could really show the world that we mean to ban nuclear weapons, we're serious, and that it's women-led. So if you want to host your own event, if you want to just show us some media love, if you want to donate some money, or if you want to learn more about the treaty and where we are in terms of negotiations, you could check out our website, womenbanthebomb.org. And to learn more about the treaty, you could go to Reaching Critical Will. Both of these links will be sent out in the follow-on email, as well as available in this webinar that is free to download and watch again after this live session. We want to thank you for attending this webinar, and we want to open the floor after this to take some questions. We'll be taking hands and going through and answering the questions one by one. After this webinar, feel free to contact me directly if you want to host your own event, if you want further resources, if you'd like to donate to us, or if you just want to shout out, give your support, and ask what else you can do. If you want to subscribe to WILPF news and alerts, you can get more information at wilpf.org. And thank you for attending this event. We will be going through and taking hands and answering questions after this.
Okay, thank you, Beatrice. I don't see any hands up quite yet, so maybe we'll give a few minutes in case you have some questions coming through. Okay, I see one from Roseanne. Roseanne, I'm going to unmute your microphone and you can put your question forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm from the Dutch section. I have a question about the preparation committee on the review of the non-proliferation treaty. Is there something we should follow, or what is the relevance? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I might turn that over to Ray.
Thank you.
Hi, Roseanne. Yes, Reaching Critical will be at the NPT Preparatory Committee, which is happening in Vienna the first 2 weeks of May. We'll be there and we'll be doing our usual reporting and analysis out of that meeting. The relevance of it, it's interesting because this year's meeting, of course, is directly in the middle of the two ban treaty negotiation periods. And so I think that our main focus for this NPT will be to bring forward our longstanding critique of the modernization programs of the nuclear armed states and how that contradicts their obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty to negotiate nuclear disarmament. We're also going to be talking somewhat about the relationship of the ban treaty to the Non-Proliferation Treaty to make sure that states understand how it's complementary and not detrimental to it. So we will be there. We'll be posting statements and documents, and all of that information will be available on our website. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ray. I don't see any other hands up right now, so maybe, oh, wait, do we have somebody? No? Yes, we do. We have Kim Lucas. Kim, go ahead. Kim, are you there? Okay.
If you're having technical difficulties as well, feel free to type your question into the question box and we can respond that way.
Okay, well, in that case, maybe what we'll do is we'll move over to another polling question. This ought to pop up if you're watching this through webcam or through your computer, rather. There'll be another question coming up like the one that we had earlier when Ray was speaking. All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to close the poll. Give a few more seconds in case you haven't answered yet, but we have a pretty high voting rate. We've also been answering a few of the questions that were sent in via chat. Those should have been received back by the person who asked them directly. We're going to go through and do a few others right now. And also look to see if we have any more hands up. Yep, we have Elsa Slater.
Hello, I'm in New York City, and I'm pretty active, but I didn't know anything about all these committees, and I'd like to work on the program committee, so how do I do that?
Alice, that's wonderful news. I think the best thing would be to contact Beatrice when this webinar is over. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay.
Thanks.
How do I contact Beatrice?
If you let me go back to the slide with the contact information on it.
Yep.
Are you able to see the slides?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Okay. I didn't see any other hands up, so maybe I'll go into some of the questions that were put in by chat. Okay. I saw that Blanca, you had asked where will the march begin in NYC? We're going to start near Bryant Park. We managed to get permission to close part of the road around there, which is pretty cool. We'll start there as the rallying point with one or two motivational speakers to get us excited. And then we're going to march across Midtown from Bryant Park up to Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza is just outside of the United Nations on 47th Street between 1st Avenue and 2nd Avenue. So we'll march over that way, and then we'll end with a big rally, like literally on the footsteps of the steps of the United Nations.
If you want to see the route, you could also go to our website, and it has detailed outline of where you can start and end. For those of you who might not be able to walk the distance or know people who aren't, there will be organizers at the endpoint, so do feel free to join us for the march or go and hang out at Dag Hammarskjöld beforehand and be ready to welcome all the marchers.
And then I also see some questions from Tanyel. You're interested in applying to attend the band sessions, the negotiations in June, but you've also asked about coming out to the NPT meeting in May. My understanding is that it might be too late to register for the NPT, but it is still possible for the negotiations of the ban. Ray, is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct. The NPT is closed, but for the ban negotiations, we don't know the deadline yet. The best way to receive information about that is to subscribe to the Reaching Critical Will newsletters. So you can do that through the reachingcriticalwill.org website.
Great, thanks, Ray. I'm going to now turn this to Kim Lucas. Kim, it looks like you have a question. So I'm going to unmute you, and then we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I just wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit more about the countries who are interested in the treaty.
Yeah, definitely. Ray, did you want to take that one as well?
Sure. So the vast majority of states in the world are participating in these negotiations. The core group of states that has been sort of leading this process have been Austria, Mexico, South Africa, Ireland, and Brazil. They've been sort of the five that have led the charge for this treaty. But we also have all of Latin America and the Caribbean, all of Africa, Southeast Asia. So we have very diverse regional interest in this treaty. The states that aren't participating are those who either possess nuclear weapons or include nuclear weapons in their security doctrines. So that's all the 9 nuclear armed states, most of NATO with the exception of the Netherlands, and also Australia, South Korea, and Japan, because those countries still insist that nuclear weapons provide security for them, and they rely on the doctrine of deterrence as part of their strategic plans. And so those are the ones not participating. But everyone else so far has been fairly constructive and very diverse regionally, and very engaged as well, which has been great to see.
Great, thank you again, Ray. We have a question from Sharon saying, will there be more negotiations, or is July the last chance? I think we definitely would like to see that July yield a positive result. The current mandate from the General Assembly to negotiate the ban treaty only extends through this June conference. I think that many supporters of the ban would argue that enough time has passed. This is an urgent and pressing priority for the international community to address. So we really want to see a strong treaty and a good treaty come out of July. Of course, if that's not possible, you know, then we might have to look into other options, possibly resuming talks at a later date. But I think that for right now, there's a real commitment to seeing a result come out of July. Ray, would you agree with that?
Yes, exactly.
Great. Okay. I'm just scanning through the remaining questions.
Jim had a really great question. He asked if we were available to do radio interviews. Yes, all the media love we could possibly gain, connect us. We would love to talk to a greater audience. We would love for you to talk to a greater audience. The point of this is to really highlight the fact that these negotiations are happening, and the fact that we've gotten used to living under a nuclear umbrella, and we should be really promoting banning these weapons, and here's our opportunity. So yes, please get in contact.
Super. Okay. I don't see any other hands up. Oh, nope, there's a question now from Sheila. Sheila, over to you.
Hello, I'm speaking from the UK. I'm interested in hearing what Ray thinks about how the nuclear weapons powers will react to a potential ban actually being agreed at the end of these negotiations. It was interesting that they felt it necessary to come out and speak before they started in New York. Obviously, their line has been that these negotiations just confuse the issue around the NPT. What do you think they're going to do, and how do you think things will develop if we get a treaty?
Ray?
Yes, so we don't know the answer to that question, but we do believe that this treaty will be useful for facilitating change in the nuclear armed states' positions and policies, as well as in NATO states and others that rely on nuclear weapons in their security doctrines. So that's the whole point of this treaty, is what we can do given that the states we're working with don't have nuclear weapons and have rejected them as a tool for security. And so the idea is that if this treaty is successful in prohibiting all nuclear weapon related activities, then it will have political, legal, economic, and social impacts on the policies and practices of nuclear armed states. So for example, if there's a prohibition on the financing of nuclear weapons, this will have an impact in terms of the economic stability of nuclear weapon maintenance and modernization programs. And this will impact, I would say, the United States and the United Kingdom in particular, because the UK relies on the US a lot for its modernization program and for the maintenance of its nuclear weapon system. And the United States is reliant on private companies to do the bulk of this work. It's very corporatized, the nuclear weapons industry. Companies like Bechtel and groups like that are profiting off the nuclear weapon industry. And so if there is divestment campaigns and successful stigmatization of these weapons, it'll be harder and harder for them to receive public and private financing. So that's one example. Another example is the legal ramifications of categorizing nuclear weapons the same way that the other weapons of mass destruction have been categorized legally as prohibited weapons. That has an impact in terms of their position in the international community and their ability to flout existing international law and their obligations and commitments that they've made over the past 30 or 40 years towards nuclear disarmament. So those are just two examples, and there's a lot more. And you can find a lot of our arguments for how this treaty should be effective on our website, Reaching Critical Will. The link is up right now for our nuclear weapon ban page, and you can find a lot of resources there with additional examples of how we think this treaty will compel change in the nuclear armed states. Thanks for the question.
Amazing. Well, Ray, maybe don't mute yourself quite yet. We have another question from Tanyel that I think would be good for you. To what extent do those states who want to engage in the ban treaty rely on nuclear arms for their trade? Who won't engage rely on nuclear arms for their trade?
Sorry, can you say that one more time, Allison?
Yep. So the question was, to what extent do those states who won't engage in the ban treaty rely on nuclear arms for trade? And that question comes from Tanyel.
I'm not sure what rely on nuclear arms for trade means.
Okay, maybe Tanyel, maybe I will unmute you, and then if you wanted to explain in greater detail your question.
Hi there, sorry, I was trying not to mute because it's quite noisy here. Yeah, the extent to which they're reluctant to engage in a ban because they rely on the nuclear arms trade financially. It really wasn't much more complicated than that, and don't want to lose out on the finance that they gain for it and the power that they gain through that. Honestly, it wasn't more complicated than that.
Okay, thanks. I think I was just thrown by the word trade because I was thinking of the arms trade in terms of selling these weapons, which isn't something that they benefit from financially. But I think what you mean is the nuclear arms industry, the production, the maintenance, and also the power politics behind nuclear weapons. Is that correct? I think. Okay, so assuming that is correct, then yes, that is the primary reason they're not engaging with this. It's an economic and a power politics reason. But that doesn't mean that this treaty won't be effective in having an impact on the social, political, economic, and legal foundations on which nuclear weapons currently rest. And so their benefits that they derive currently economically or in terms of power will be undermined by the existence of this treaty, even by the process of negotiating this treaty. And that's one of the reasons that these nuclear arms states have been so vociferously opposed to the negotiations of this treaty, why the US, UK, and France found it necessary to stand outside the GA Hall and denounce what we're doing, why they've issued damning statements of us in the General Assembly over the last several years, or why the US instructed its allies not to participate. They understand that this treaty will have an impact on sort of the social construct of nuclear weapons, which will make it more difficult for them to derive the power that they currently derive from these weapons. Stigmatizing other weapon systems has led to a fall of perception of the legitimacy of those weapons for use in conflict or for possession at all. And so we've seen, for example, the United States, which is neither party to the Landmines Treaty or the Cluster Munitions Treaty, has changed its behavior in relation to both of those instruments. It donates a lot of money to landmine clearance. It's stopped producing these weapons and stopped selling these weapons. So even though it hasn't ratified the agreements, its behavior is still being impacted. And so those are the types of things we want to see happen with this treaty. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Ray. I think I'm going to now go over to our third and final poll for this webinar. And then following that, if there are no further questions, I think we'll close it. Okay, just a few more seconds and then we'll close the poll. Okay, thanks everybody. Beatrice has just a few final things to say and then we'll wrap up.
So we'll be sending out a follow-on email after this webinar. The webinar will also be available in the coming day to be able to download and share. But we would love if you would get on our website and show us some love, share, follow us on Twitter, say you're going to RSVP and attend if you can join us here in New York. And we're also looking for volunteers to do social media and outreach still. So if you want to get involved, there's so many different ways. So again, donation page, support us. Here's a volunteer form. We have people working on different parts of the world to try and make this come together. And definitely look at our how-to guide. Find our resources. We have some really great resources, graphics and banners. Infographics will be coming in the coming weeks. We have some videos here in the US. The coming week is the New York Solidarity March for March on Science. So this week we're focusing on the cooperation between science and disarmament. Next week will be environmental issues, and we'll be continuing to plug into relevant issues surrounding in the coming weeks to interrelate it to disarmament. So please do visit our website and send me messages if you want to get involved, and thank you for your support.
Great, thank you, Beatrice, and thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to hear about the band, to hear about our march. We really do hope that this will not be the last time we hear from you, and that we'll be working together in the weeks ahead to make the world a safer place with no nuclear weapons. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great day.